Jeg var nylig med på et presseevent for Dune Awakening, hvor vi fikk muligheten til å spille ganske mange timer faktisk. Jeg har bortimot over 5 timer med opptak, og det på tross at jeg glemte å trykke record flere ganger. Jeg hadde i utgangspunktet tenkt å filme den introduksjonen her i bilen før jeg gikk på toget, men jeg glemte, som jeg alltid gjør, at parkeringsplassen på Råde togstasjon smekkfull. Altså, folk parkerer jo midt i veien og oppå fortau, og det tar helt av. Uansett så betydde det at jeg måtte parkere på bussholdeplassen et greit stykke unna og løpe til toget, så sånn ble det. Men jeg rakk toget, fikk roa ned nervene og satt meg ned med den nyeste boka i Stormlight-serien. Wind and Truth. Altså, seriøst, folkens. Dere må lese den serien her, altså, hvis dere liker fantasy. Den er helt konge. Jeg kom omsider frem til Oslo, og ja, jeg klar over at Level Up vanligvis kjører litt sånn reiseblogg når de drar på presseevents, men det jo som regel i utlandet, og jeg tenkte litt sånn at Oslo, det vel kanskje ikke så spennende for oss nordmenn. Men jeg har gjort opp for det.
Mellom dypt og trolsk landskap ligger Nordens juvel, en levende vikingsaga der tidens pust visker gjennom befolkningen. Her hviler Oslo som en kongelig krone mellom fjell og skog. Som huldrens lokkende sang, så forfører Oslo deg med sine praktfulle severdigheter. Operahuset, Oslofjorden, rundkjøringer og konteinere, måker, tiger, tiss.
Den første dagen av opplegget så startet vi med en enkel lunsj på Eldorado før vi tok turen til Funcom sine lokaler. Og her fikk vi en kjapp innføring i Funcoms historie, de ansatte, hvilke spill de har lagd, og litt om filosofien deres rundt spillutvikling. Noe som egentlig veldig interessant for meg personlig, da jeg har et ganske skjært forhold til flere av de tidligere spillene dem, så da spesielt Den lengste reisen og Anarchy Online. Vi fikk lov til å være med å spille inn lyden til en sint folkemengde som skal brukes i Dune Awakening, og vi fikk også se litt hvordan de jobber med Unreal Engine for å lage områder i spillet. Etter det her så bar det videre til Tilt for litt sosialisering og shuffleboard, før vi tok veien videre til Mamma Pizza for litt fantastisk pizza. Jeg var jo en del av gruppa som i hovedsak går som innholdsskapere. Det var jo en ganske stor gruppe, og det var dessverre mange jeg ikke fikk muligheten til å snakke med, men jeg ble ekstra godt kjent med spesielt 3 stykker. Shawnee Du, som kjent for å 100% spill, Total Eclipse, som for det meste lager Satisfactory-videoer, og Boomstick Gaming, som mer kjent for å lage guides og kampsystemanalyser. Vi hadde mange utrolig gode og interessante samtaler om spill, spillindustrien, om innholdsskaping, og vi satt og skravla og koste oss til sent på kveld. Dagen etter så møtte vi opp på Eldorado klokka 9, hvor vi fikk en kjapp presentasjon, og selvfølgelig den viktigste delen. Hands-on med Dune Awakening.
The only peace I find is a future that never happened. One where I, Paul Atreides, was never born.
I sin helhet så hadde jeg det ganske gøy med spillet. Jeg synes de har tatt en del gode avgjørelser her. I første omgang så tenker jeg på historien og hvordan de har valgt å lage en alternativ tidslinje hvor Paul Atreides aldri ble født. Ikke bare synes jeg det et interessant premiss, men jeg støtter den avgjørelsen da det åpner for langt mer kreativ frihet. Jeg personlig føler at spill som må forholde seg til etablerte historietråder føles ofte litt låst. Og jeg foretrekker mye heller at de kan bruke etablert lore og verdensbygging til å kunne utvikle sine egne historier innad i det kjente universet. Og det jo åpenbart at det her et valg de har måttet ta i forhold til restriksjoner de har fått i sammenheng med produksjonsselskapet som lager filmene, men jeg synes det var et riktig valg. Dune Awakening blir beskrevet som et åpen verden flerspillers survival-spill på massiv skala. Og av de første timene jeg har fått spille, så kan jeg helt klart si meg enig i at det føles og spilles som et survival-spill. Du finner de klassiske sjangerstandardene her, som bygging av baser, ressursinnsamling og maskiner som kan lage nye ressurser ut fra ting du finner i spillverden og så videre, men med en egen Dune-twist på ting. De to største mekanikkene som veldig Dune, at du må være bevisst på sollys og sandnormer. Oppholder du deg for lenge i sola, så vil du overopphetes, få solstikk og bli dehydrert. Derfor så må du passe på å gå i skyggen så mye som mulig, og hvis du tråkker for langt i sanda, så vil sandormene plukke opp vibrasjonene og jakte deg. Disse to elementene synes jeg de har naila. Spillet gjør en god jobb med å få det her til å føles ut som en konstant trussel. Jeg tenkte først at sandormene kanskje endte opp med å bli litt sånn gimmick, men hvis de spiser deg, så mister du alt. Alt av klær, våpen og ressurser du har på deg borte for alltid. Og de snakket også noe om at sandormene kommer til å bli mer aggressive enn det de i startområdet. Jeg liker å se sånne grep som ikke bare ikonisk for universet, men som også fungerer som en grunnleggende spillmekanikk du alltid må være bevisst over. Andre ting som ganske så Dune, for eksempel at du kan tømme døde fiender for blod, for å rense det blodet om til vann. Og at du har en egen laserkutter for å dele det. Og den laserkuttinga har de faktisk fått overraskende tilfredsstillende. Altså, det å følge de der opplyste spora medfullt av lydeffekten og animasjonen når ting deler seg, det føles digg. Når det kommer til bygginga, så skal jeg innrømme at jeg knota en del. Jeg skal 100% innrømme at en stor del av det fordi jeg ræv på å bygge. Det ikke jeg som vanligvis bygger ting når jeg spiller disse spillene med folk. For jeg kan virkelig ikke organisere på en ryddig måte i det hele tatt whatsoever. Jeg har en tendens til å bare slenge ut de tingene som spillet ber meg om å bygge, uten å tenke så mye over at de skal ha en logisk plassering, og så begynner jeg å bygge resten av bygningen etterpå, ved behov, og det blir ofte støkt, og det blir uoversiktlig, og generelt veldig lite praktisk. Et godt eksempel denne basen her, som jeg bygde litt senere i spillet, hvor jeg konstant satt meg fast mellom maskiner og veggen for å ikke bli treffet av sola, ikke sant? Helt håpløst. Det lov å le. Jeg tror faktisk noen lo høyt bak meg når de så på skjermen min, og det faktisk helt greit. Noe av den stukinga her kan nok likevel tilegnes til mangel på finpuss i den nåværende betaen. Bygginga i seg selv for så vidt intuitiv nok, men de har fortsatt en jobb å gjøre når det kommer til å jevne ut hvor ting snapper på plass, og UI og den slags. Og det her også ting de har adressert selv, altså, bare sånn så det sagt. Og jeg klarte faktisk å bygge noe halvveis koselig og funksjonabelt etter hvert, i hvert fall etter min egen standard da. Jeg har også gått for å lage et litt mer avansert kampsystem enn det du vanligvis finner i survival-sjangeren. Her det blant annet mulighet for pareringer i nærkamp, en del unike ferdigheter som du setter poeng i, for å så legge på en slags hotbar med 3 forskjellige aktive ferdigheter som du kan bruke til enhver tid. Du har 5 forskjellige såkalte schools, som i effekt klassene, og alle karakterer kan være alle klassene, men ikke samtidig. Du kan fjerne og sette poeng fritt i den klassen du har startet på, men hvis du vil bytte klasse, så må du respekke det hos en NPC i noen av spillets baser. Og jeg startet jo selvfølgelig som Swordmaster, da jeg veldig glad i nærkamp, men jeg innså fort at det var langt mer effektivt og trygt å bare skyte alt på avstand. Jeg hadde et flyvende kne som one-shotta de fleste, men om det var flere fiender rundt meg, så ble jeg fort skutt ned. Og jeg synes det var litt kjipt at det å skyte var en bedre strategi, selv om jeg hadde en nærkampbild. Og det her kan jo selvfølgelig være litt at jeg suger og ikke forstår spillmekanikkene godt nok, men jeg tror det her en langt mer effektiv bild senere i spillet, hvor man får liksom de ikoniske skjolda, eller om man spiller i en gruppe da. Men som en solospiller i starten, så funket det i hvert fall bedre å skyte enn å slå, i hvert fall for min del. Jeg kunne nok ønske at man kunne bytte klasse litt mer i farta, der det noen av klassene som har langt bedre måter å navigere seg gjennom områdene på. At man kanskje hadde 2 presets som man kunne bytte gjennom, en for utforsking og en for slåssing. Og de sa altså på Q&A etter spillingen at det her noe de har hatt oppe til vurdering, og fortsatt vurderer fortløpende. Og det kan også være at det her blir et ikke-problem så fort du begynner å få tak i og kan bygge fremkomstmidler. Når det kommer til massiv-ordbruken om flerspillerdelen, så omhandler det her for det meste endgame. De snakket om et endgame som blir kalt for Deep Desert, som kommer til å bli et stort kart som wipes en gang i uka. Her kan spillere og guilds kartlegge hvor de finner dungeons, ressurser og utstyr, og så eventuelt selge de karta videre til andre spillere og så videre. Og da vil den prosessen starte på nytt igjen uka etter. Og det her kommer det mye mer informasjon om altså, i intervjuet som andre del av den videoen her. Men jeg vil bare nevne at jeg synes det her høres ut som en utrolig spennende idé, og jeg håper det blir så kult som det høres ut. Og avslutningsvis, før jeg går videre til intervjuet, så skal jeg si at jeg fikk faktisk alle ressursene jeg trengte for å bygge motorsykkel, men fordi jeg totalt idiot, så klarte jeg å bygge feil ting med de ressursene, så jeg endte opp med å ikke få motorsykler likevel. Men vi fikk lov til å prøve ornitoptere, og jeg vet hvorfor. Det ser visuelt kult ut, og det hadde jo vært tøft om noen prøvde å få til noen dritkule shots og putta episk musikk på. Ja da, det er greit det, Funcom. Det er greit det. I got you.
Yeah, I guess we can just start off by you telling us who you are and what you do and what your personal relationship with the Dune franchise is.
Sure. So my name's Joel Bylos. I'm the Chief Creative Officer at Funcom and the Creative Director on Dune Awakening. My personal relationship with Dune goes a long way back to when I was just a teenager, and I tried to read the books and I felt that they were very difficult to read.
Yeah.
Quite dense. And then I played the 1992 Dune game that came out. Not the RTS, but the Cryo game, which I really, really liked. And then I got a real feel for the universe, and then I played the RTS, and then I kind of fell in love, and then I read the books again. And I was like, okay, this is worth the effort. So yeah, that's kind of how I got started with Dune back in the day.
Nice. You said in your presentation that Anarchy Online also was heavily inspired by Dune. But I'm wondering how much of Dune Awakening is inspired by Anarchy Online?
The eternal question. So, I mean, we do have, like, our game director was working on Anarchy Online, and we have quite a few people in the company who were there for Anarchy Online's launch and were around. I think that, like, the way that things have changed in sort of game development means that a lot of the lessons of Anarchy Online still apply.
Yeah.
And there's not a day goes by when someone in the company doesn't say, yeah, but that was easy to do back in 2001, so why can't we do it now?
Yeah.
So it's, so Anarchy Online, I think, definitely has some, I mean, Funcom always has these games that are in their past that kind of have an influence on what we're doing. So yeah, definitely, I think, particularly Vilja Sommerbäck, our game director, he brings up a lot of Anarchy Online moments when we're working on Dune.
Yeah. I used to play Anarchy Online, actually.
I love it. It was the game that forced MIT to shut down external internet connections because so many people at MIT were playing the game.
Oh, cool.
It's cool.
That's cool. Any clear inspirations, like other games for this game?
Oh yes, I think so. I mean, like one of the things that I think you'll see when you play the game quite clearly is like there's a bit of a Fallout open world inspiration there. We have radio stations in the game that you can tune into and listen to while you're playing, and they give you information about the world. You can hear the Harkonnen propaganda channel or the Atreides propaganda channel. We can listen to the Mining Guild channel where they're talking about different issues. So that's kind of, I think, Fallout inspired. And then the ecology labs also feel a bit like vaults in Fallout. And that you come to them and there's like these places that are kind of buried in the earth and you don't really know what's been done in there. So I think I could point to that. I think combat, it's not a cover shooter like Mass Effect, but I think Mass Effect was an inspiration in terms of like the combination of abilities and shooting and the way that it feels in a science fiction world right for you to be able to play with these different kinds of styles. I think Conan Exiles, our own game, obviously has had an influence on things. I mean, we made the journey system in Conan Exiles and then we expanded upon it in Dune. The building system from Dune, it's actually kind of interesting because we made Conan Exiles building, and then when we started working on Dune, we said like, oh, we need to make it work better with controllers because it kind of sucked on Exiles. So then we implemented a version in Dune that worked well with controllers, and then the Exiles guys played Dune, the guys at Funcom, and then they played what we were making with Dune, and they were like, oh, fuck this, and then they went and backported it into Exiles and made a better version of what we have in Dune. So now we need to re-import and make it, but that's nice, that's really nice. So I think it like shows shows how games work, like our game in development helped a game that's already developed get better and vice versa. I think that's kind of the main ones, and then there's probably 1,000 small inspirations along the way, obviously. I actually, one more that I'll mention is in Ghost of Tsushima, when you clear a map area and you open the map, there's this super crispy animation where everything blows away.
Yeah,
I'm stealing that directly into our game to try to make our game feel that good. Yeah.
Nice. There's a big focus on narrative, like at least the part that I played so far. And I'm wondering how much a narrative will there be like at the ending of the game? Is there anything planned for that?
We treat the story like it will come in chapters, right? But the game will be live, hopefully for a long time, and we'll continue to update the game with different chapters of narrative.
Yeah.
So there's a story, an arc that the player plays through, and at launch the arc kind of has some nice cliffhanger moments, and then it will be like, okay, and then we're going to update the game, you know, let's say 3 months, 6 months later, we'll come with more story. And then more story. And we continue to tell the story through the life of the game. So that at least is a plan. I mean, we did this with Secret World, which was one of our old MMOs. And I was game director on Secret World for a while. And I loved doing that kind of like, here's the next part of the story. And players were always really excited for what was coming. Hopefully with Dune we can get the same effect.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it. I loved Secret World too, by the way.
Yeah.
I really love the way you constructed the story and...
Yeah. I mean, I can't take, like Ragnar did a really good job with that, but I was doing the content and quest design for that game, and it was a fun game. I wish it sold more so I could keep working on it forever.
Yeah. Another thing I'm really interested in like the end game is that there's politics and there's going to be like voting. Can you maybe go more in depth about those mechanics?
So the way it works is in the Dune universe there's this council called the Landsraad. And the Landsraad in our game, they vote upon various outcomes for Arrakis because there's this war of assassins going on and the Emperor sort of wants them to keep an eye on things. And so there's 25 different great houses that make up the Landsraad. And the factions, the Harkonnen and the Atreides, they try every week to convince the Landsraad to vote for them for what they want. So the Atreides and the Harkonnen players, the guilds, can go and talk to the house representative and they can find out that this house wants this, and then they will give them their vote. And this can be, this house wants a secret tape from an ecolab, or this house wants you to craft 10 ornithopters and deliver it, or this house wants you to go to the deep desert, the PvP area, and hold a specific territory for them. And so there are lots of activities from the Landsraad. For each activity that your guild contributes to, you earn what we call voting power. And so at the end of the week on a Sunday night, the guilds then cast their vote for what the Landsraad should do during the next week. And those kind of votes go for, there's usually 3 different options, and those options are randomized from many. So, and it might be something like the winning faction, say the Atreides, win the Landsraad. The Landsraad has the most votes for the Atreides, and the Atreides want that crafting costs are reduced by 33% across all of their faction for the next week. Or it might be that like the Harkonnen win the vote, and they vote that the Harkonnen's weapons are increased in power by 50% for the next week. It might be that the Atreides win and they say, okay, the Landsraad votes that a special vendor will arrive on Arrakis and only sell things to the Atreides for that week, and the items that they sell are very special. So it's a way of changing the server gameplay. It's a way of competing politically to try and achieve these outcomes, and it's sort of supposed to make people hate each other a little bit more. So the Atreides and Harkonnen, just like Alliance and Horde in World of Warcraft, are really competitive. You kind of want that competitiveness among the factions.
There is a certain vibe to Dune, like the universe, like the visuals and the music and the sound. And I'm wondering about the music, because I always thought that Funcom games has really nice music. I think Age of Conan is one of my favorite game soundtracks of all time. I'm just wondering, what was your approach to this, and who is composing?
Well, we did the classic thing, and we went and contacted Knut, who did the composition for Age of Conan, our favorite composer to work with. And we asked him to jump in and do the soundtrack for Dune Awakening. So we've been working with Knut for a few years now on this, and I mean, the soundtrack is phenomenal, and it's he does such good work. The man deserves more recognition, I think, across the world. He's such a good composer. And look, we just recorded a full orchestra playing the soundtrack. So what you're hearing in the game is actually not the orchestra, it's just the compositions from computer. So soon we'll have the real orchestral soundtracks in the game with proper stems, and then you'll be able to feel the music as well. And I think we actually have maybe a small behind the scenes video that we're going to put out about that.
Nice. There's a lot of lore-based mechanics. And I'm just wondering, how much of the mechanics did you have to apply to the lore, and how many mechanics did you make because of the lore?
I mean, we have this rule, we make design principles when we're making a game, and sort of one of the first design principles on this game is make your designs fit Dune.
Yeah.
Do not make Dune fit your designs.
Yes.
And that means that we had to actually spend a lot of our time doing, I think it's fairly easy to copy something from another game.
Yeah.
It's not as easy to like make something new that feels good. So I think, like, for example, just using the laser, the cut array to cut rocks, that took a long time just to get the feeling right. But we couldn't just make it work like every other game. It was like we had to think about how Dune would do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the same with shields. Like, shields is a big one. It made us spend a lot of time on the combat, getting the slow blade piercing the shield and making that feel good. Because it would have been very easy to just make Halo shields.
Yeah.
But that's not what Dune is.
You said about the deep desert that it gets wiped, what is it, once a week? I'm wondering, of all the content that can spread up in the deep desert, how much is handcrafted and like how much is generated?
So our tool set, we've been building this for a while. It's quite interesting. We have this like Houdini generation system built into Unreal. That's our custom tool set. So the islands that you're playing on, they're generated by Houdini, and then we go in and handcraft the islands themselves to make them feel better.
Yeah.
And then we place them in the world, and then the sand between is also generated by the same system. We call it the Sea of Sand system. So the deep desert works the same as the Haga Basin. It's just that the deep desert is more spread out. So we have many different layouts of the deep desert that we create. We handcraft those layouts, but we use procedural generation to make the islands first. Then we go and handcraft the islands to make them feel correct for gameplay. And then we place those out in different layouts to make the world feel like it changes every week. Yeah.
Cool. I'm wondering a bit about guild systems. I haven't heard too much about that and how it works.
When you're playing,
Yeah.
push O to go into the social tab. There you can create a guild. It costs a certain amount of Solari to create a guild, just to avoid that, new person spamming guilds all the time. And then once you've created a guild, you can set permissions for other guild members. Because this game has vehicle crafting and buildings, you can organize permissions around like what level of guild can access which things in your bases. So you can make a certain amount of different permission levels for guild members. And that's kind of it right now. That's how the guilds work. And and eventually we'll add things like heraldry, like you'll be able to choose your own banners and things for your guild.
Okay. Do I understand it correctly if that the end game part of it is players steering the economy?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the idea is that we have the exchange system, which allows players to trade freely. There are parts of the game where it's like there are rare resources, things that are harder to get, like the deep desert is usually the place you want to go to get a lot of spice, and spice being very important in Dune. Players who don't want to go into that area because it's dangerous or it's PvP, they can buy spice off the exchange so it can be sold to them by other players. And then in addition, we have things like unique schematics. To explain that a little bit, our technology tree allows you to unlock things that you can craft forever. So you can craft an infinite amount of knives or swords, but you might find a unique sword that no one has ever gotten on the server before in the deep desert, hidden in the bottom of an ecology lab. That unique sword you can craft one or two, right? Depending on how big the schematic is. And that schematic itself, you decide whether you want to use it for yourself or whether you want to sell it to someone else on the exchange.
Yeah.
And then you decide if you craft the weapon, do you want to keep the weapon or do you want to sell it to someone else? And so that drives this kind of player-driven, hopefully, economy on the back end. And we'll see. I mean, it's hard to predict these things. I don't think the game is going to turn into Eve with a very complex economy.
No.
It's not that kind of level, but I think having a certain amount of player-crafted things that are very unique will make it work.
So Dune is an IP that will probably and hopefully draw in a lot of new players. What are your design philosophies behind like getting them introduced to a game like this if they're not used to it but they love the IP?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is to tutorialize as much as possible. You may have seen some of that. I'm being very pushy right now, and like you have to do this and then this and then this in the tutorial. We will allow people to find a way to skip that after we get to launch period. But right now, it's kind of about making people understand the mechanics of the game and why they're different, because it's a bit hand-holdy, but it's important that people get in. The other way that we do things is just like if you like Dune and you know Dune and you come to our character creation, you're going to see things in there with the questions that you get asked that like make you excited because you're like, oh, I can choose to be a Mentat or there's a Bene Gesserit. The other side of that is if you don't know anything about Dune, the character creation is a very safe place for you to read about what a Bene Gesserit is or read about what a Mentat is. You start finding out more about the universe. And these are like I mean, that's the lovely and unique thing about Dune. Like a Bene Gesserit, what's that? Whereas, like, you know, someone who plays a fantasy game knows what a sorcerer is from game to game. But when you play our game, you kind of get to learn about these classes, and maybe that's intriguing and interesting for you as well.
Are there any unique endgame abilities and skills?
So every skill tree in the game has what we call a keystone ability. The way the skills system works, you get skill points, but you can't train in skills past a certain point until you find the advanced trainers. And then those advanced trainers send you on quests in the world to unlock more and more abilities. The keystone abilities, which are the top tier, you have to complete their quest lines to get. So those are kind of the end game abilities. And then some of those abilities are also impacted by how much spice you have in your blood. So they only work when you're actually high on spice, which is kind of a unique part of the game as well.
I'm wondering a bit, how big will the individual servers be? How many players?
So we have different server sizes depending. So the Haga Basin has a 40-person concurrency, which means that it can have more players on it during the day, but only 40 maximum at any given time. But then those siege servers are shared with a single deep desert map. The deep desert map can have, I think, 900 people across the entire map at the same time. I may be wrong about that exact number, but it's up in the hundreds at least.
Yeah.
And then you have like social hubs, which kind of act like the cities, like Orgrimmar in World of Warcraft. Those areas have like, I think, 100 players per area before they start to make an instance. And then the instance will have another 100, and then it just sort of stacks up depending on how many people go there.
Thank you for the interview. It's very, very interesting, and I'm really looking forward to playing this game when it fully launches, and before as well.
Thanks for the chat. Been great having you guys here.
Thank you.
Yes, da er jeg på hotellrommet da. Citybox. Egentlig veldig enkelt. Enkelt med seng. Og så er det her, enkel do. Eller som jeg liker å kalle det, shittybox. Jeg hadde egentlig ikke tenkt å filme på hotellrommet, det var egentlig bare for å dra den shittybox-vitsen. Jeg synes det var verdt det.